suspended. Having found probable cause, the court is going to hold you no bond and appoint the public defender to represent you in the VOP case as well.
Yes, sir.
Next court date for 25 CT 866 would be March 13th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B, if out on bond. April 10th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B. And case 22 CF 1999. Next court date would be March 20th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4F.
All right. Thanks, sir. You can have a seat.
Yes, sir.
Next, I have 25 MM 486 State versus Deborah Albany. I was told she bonded out.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did she fill out a PD application? Mm-hmm. Okay, she did. Okay, she did fill out an application for the public defender's office. So to the extent she's already bonded out, I'll appoint the PD's office to represent her.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
Next, I've got Jeremy Barrios, case numbers 25 CF 645 and 25 CT 865.
PD approved.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. You've been approved for the services of the public defender's office, so I'll appoint them to represent you. In case number 25 CT 865, you're charged with driving under the influence. The court does find probable cause for that charge and sets bond in the amount of $500. The special conditions is you're not to operate a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license. Well, I'll get to the conditions as we address both of them. In 25 CF 645, the public defender will be appointed to represent you as well, but you're charged with possession of cocaine and possession of drug paraphernalia, which the court does find probable cause. For possession of cocaine, bond is set at $2,500. And on the possession of drug paraphernalia, bond is set at $500. Special conditions of bond in both cases will include no driving without a valid driver's license, and you're not to consume any illegal narcotics or prescription medication without a valid prescription or any alcohol.
Next court date for 25 CT 865 will be March 13th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B. If out on bond, April 10th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B. For 5 CF 645, next court date will be on demand.
Thank you, sir. You can have a seat. Next, I have Ashley Bodenschatz, 2025 CF 649.
PD approved.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. You do qualify for their services, but you're arrested on charges for possession of methamphetamine and possession of drug paraphernalia, both of which the court finds that probable cause exists. Bond for possession of methamphetamine will be set at $2,500, and on the possession of drug paraphernalia, bond will be set at $500. Special condition bond will include possession or consumption of any illegal narcotics or prescription medication without a valid prescription and no alcohol. You're also not to return to 2925 North Poinciana Boulevard, Kissimmee, Florida, the Midgard self-storage where the alleged incident occurred.
Next court date on demand.
Thank you, ma'am. You can have a seat. Next, I have 25 CT 871 State versus Shannon Carnley.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Afternoon, sir. I'm going to appoint the public defender's office to represent you in this case, but you're charged with DUI with property damage, for which the court does find probable cause and sets bond in the amount of $2,500. Conditions of your bond, you're not to consume or possess any drugs or alcohol or prescription medication without a valid prescription, and you're not to drive without a valid driver's license.
Next court date, March 13th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B. If out on bond, April 10th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B.
Thanks, sir. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
Next, I have Nicole Martin, 25mm489.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Ms. Martin. I'm going to appoint the Public Defender's Office to represent you. You do qualify for their services, but you were charged with a misdemeanor loitering and prowling. The court does find probable cause, but sets bond in the amount of $250. And you're not to return to the scene at 5005 Kings, it's KYNGS Heath Road, the Fantasy World Resort.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Next
you.
court date on demand.
Next, I have 2025 CF 651 State versus Bobby McGee.
Good afternoon, y'all.
Good afternoon, Mr. McGee. Sir, I'm going to appoint the Public Defender's Office to represent you. You do qualify for their services. In this case, you were arrested for charge of possession of a weapon or ammunition by a convicted felon. According to the arrest affidavit, it looks like it was a pair of brass knuckles, which qualifies under 790.001 as a weapon. The court does find probable cause, but sets bond in the amount of $3,500 with special conditions that you're not to possess any weapons of any kind.
Next court date on demand.
Thanks, sir. You can have a seat. Next, I have 25 CT 869 Joel Monsanto.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. I'm going to appoint the Public Defender's Office to represent you. You do qualify for their services, but you've been charged with driving while license suspended. The court does find probable cause for the charge and sets bond in the amount of $500 with special conditions that you're not to drive without a valid driver's license. Mr. Baker, he also looks like he's out on probation, 24 CF 890. Is the state taking or asking the court to take any action on that?
State would ask for a bond bureau vote in that case, Your Honor.
No, he's on probation.
Oh,
In that case, but there hadn't been, it wasn't listed as an on-view VOP or anything like that.
I'm sorry, I was into the case, the state. Oh, I'm sorry. I believe there'll be a VOP filed, but I don't believe there needs to be any action taken today.
Okay, all right, so the court won't take any action on that. And the next court date?
Next court date, March 13th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4B. If out on bond, March 17th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom 4E.
Thanks, sir. You can have a seat. Next, I've got Kevin Reyes Martinez, 25 CF 642.
CD approved.
Mr. Reyes Martinez, I'm going to appoint the Public Defender's Office to represent you. Do qualify for their services, sir. But you were charged or arrested on 3 charges. The first was driving while license suspended as a habitual traffic offender. The court finds probable cause and sets bond in the amount of $2,500. And the second charge was no vehicle registration, which the court finds probable cause and sets bond in the amount of $500. And the third charge was for operating a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license. There's probable cause and bond is set at $500 with special conditions so that you're not to operate a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license.
Next court date on demand.
Thanks, sir. You can have a seat. Next is Jose Reyna Johnson, 25 CF 644.
Good afternoon, y'all.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm going to appoint the Public Defender to represent you. You qualify for their services as well. But you're charged with burglary of an unoccupied structure, criminal mischief, and petty theft. The court does find probable cause for each of those charges. As to count 1, burglary of an unoccupied structure, the bond is set at $2,500. On the second charge, criminal mischief, over $1,000, bond is set at $2,500. And on count 3 for petty theft, bond is set at $250. with special conditions that you're not to return to 125 Donegan Avenue at All Auto Towing LLC.
Next court date on demand.
Next, I have 2025 CF 647, Lorena Rodriguez. Good afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. You qualify for their services, but you're arrested on a charge for battery on a person 65 years of age or older. The court does find probable cause, but on that charge, I'm going to set bond at $2,500 with special conditions that you're not to return to the scene of the alleged offense at 107 Valles Way. It's Valles in Kissimmee, Florida. Not to have any contact with the alleged victim, Justina Rodriguez. You're also not to possess or consume any drugs or alcohol or prescription narcotics without a valid prescription.
Next court date on demand.
Thank you, ma'am. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
Next, I have Mariska Rosario, 25MM487.
She qualifies for direct pretrial release, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Ms. Rosario. I'm going to appoint the, oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. You do qualify for their services, but you've been charged with driving while license suspended. You do qualify for direct pretrial release without bond. So you'll be placed on pretrial release, comply with those requirements, but you're also not to operate a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license. Okay.
Thank you.
Next court date on demand.
Next, I have Angel Santos Torres, 25MM488.
Hello, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm going to appoint the public defender's office to represent you. You do qualify for their services. But you've been charged with a battery and violation of a domestic violence injunction. The court finds probable cause for both of those charges. For the battery charge, court sets bond in the amount of $2,500. And as to the violation of domestic injunction, bond is set at $3,500. You're not to have any contact with the alleged victim in the case. That would be, well, the named victim wasn't in the police report because she invoked Marcy's law, but no contact with the alleged victim, no return to 1510 Royal Street, number 57 in Kissimmee, Florida. And you are to abide by all provisions contained in the injunction in place in case number 2025 DR 615 DV.
Next court date on demand.
With that, sir, you can have a seat. Next, I have Mr. Clarence Sexton, 25MM494.
PD approved.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sexton. Sir, you were arrested on a charge for panhandling or solicitation without a permit. The court does find probable cause, and you don't qualify for direct pretrial release, but I'm going to set bond in the amount of $50.
I don't have it. I'm going to read out the date to it, sir.
I'm appointing the public defender to represent you. They'll be able to help you take care of anything with that, okay?
So when's my next court date, sir? For some sympathy.
Next court date's on demand.
Thanks, sir. You can have a seat. Next, I've got David Smith, case number 25 CF 652.
PD approved.
Good evening.
Good afternoon, Mr. Smith. I'm appointing the public defender to represent you. You do qualify for their services. But you've been charged with battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting an officer without violence, and threatening law enforcement with death or harm. I do find probable cause exists for those charges, but for the battery on law enforcement, bond is set in the amount of $3,500. On the resisting without violence, bond is set at $1,000. Then on the threats to law enforcement, bond is set at $1,000. With special conditions that you're not to return to the Circle K at 808 Buenaventura Boulevard in Kissimmee, Florida. You're also not to consume any drugs or alcohol or prescription narcotics without a valid prescription.
Next court date on demand.
Thanks, sir. You have a seat. Next, I have Trocon Williams, 25 CT 860, 25 CT 862, 25 CT 863, 25 CT 864.
He qualifies for direct pretrial release, Your Honor.
All right.
Good morning.
Hello, Mr. Williams. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. You do qualify for their services. You also qualify for direct pretrial release without bond. So
Thank you.
you'll be on the pretrial or placed into the pretrial release program. But you're charged with possessing, displaying a revoked, canceled driver's license, violation of a non-resident exemption for a driver's license, no vehicle registration, and driving while license suspended. The only conditions outside of the regular PTR requirements are that you're not to drive without a valid driver's license or vehicle registration, and you're not to consume any drugs or alcohol without, or prescription medication without a valid prescription.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yes, PTR for all of them.
I have a question.
So I can't give any kind of legal advice. Mr. Dorsey would be able to speak with you. You do have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent.
I can answer your question.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
I have a court date. The next court date would be March 17th, 8:30 a.m. courtroom.
And then finally, I've got Quincy Williams, 25 mm 485.
Should be
It's a reset. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Williams, I'm going to appoint the public defender's office to represent you. You do qualify for their services. And Mr. Becker, you might be able to help me out with this. So there's the domestic violence battery, and then the arrest affidavit indicates possession of a controlled substance without a valid prescription, but that wasn't charged in the arrest affidavit.
Yes, I believe that this was a reset. I believe there was a reset based on.
He was in the hospital, I think. I don't know if there was a different charging affidavit.
Yeah, I believe so, because I have Quincy Williams as well.
Do you have two separate case numbers?
The paperwork. Just give me one moment.
That's fine. It looks like there are two different agency case numbers.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well. I only have the PC packet for the domestic violence battery.
Okay. That's the only one I was given to, so I guess, I don't know, with it hadn't, the possession charge hasn't been charged in the charging affidavit. It's only in the body of it, but it references another agency case number 25-001713. And then the charging affidavit is actually for case number 25-001712. So it looks like there's a separate one that hasn't been provided. But since that one's not charged in the charging affidavit, we won't address that second charge today. And address just the domestic violence battery. So having appointed the public defender's office, there is probable cause on the domestic violence battery charge, Mr. Williams. And on that, the court sets bond the amount of $1,000. You're not to have any contact with the alleged victim, Elizabeth Tolentino. You're not to return to 2225 McLaren Circle, number 51 in Kissimmee, Florida, the alleged incident location. You're not to possess any weapons, firearms, or ammunition. You're not to consume any drugs or alcohol or prescription narcotics without a valid prescription. Okay.
Next court date on demand.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, Crystal Osborne, we're pretrial release. What is, happening with the second case?
So the possession of a controlled substance wasn't charged in the charging affidavit, and it has a second agency case number.
Yes, I have a second, charging affidavit for the possession of, methamphetamine. It's a totally separate arrest report.
Okay, we weren't given that.
Don't have it, Your Honor.
So he'll probably have to be reset tomorrow.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that.
Request a 24-hour reset for, the, get it.
Yeah, that one. Will be, I don't know the case number, but that would be 24-hour reset.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Anything? Sorry.
I wanted to bring up one matter. I have a looks like defendant Cordero Montgomery.
Yeah.
Weekend IAs.
He bonded out, Your Honor.
Wanted to, okay, because I do have a supplemental report.
Oh, okay. All right. Mr. Dorsey, thank you for your time, sir. Have a good day.
Have a good rest of the day, Your Honor.
All right.